Alright, so a formerly undefeated matchroom prospect in Jalil Major Hackett has just lost that precious O last weekend in a big upset loss to Jose Roman. Now this can happen in boxing, but it is always a massive upset when the prospect loses this early in his career. This was just his 10th pro fight. Now I'm not 100% sure what the odds were, and I don't know if there's a way to find old odds like that, but I'm sure seeing the 21-year-old welterweight Jalil Hackett as a 1-25 favourite. But then I came across this poor chap's comment on the video of the full fight on Matchroom's YouTube channel, and if my translation of American odds and normal odds are correct, then yeah, he was a 1-25 favourite. So massive upset loss either way. Not sure what the odds were for Roman though. Oh mate, I'm getting into it with the betting already, so let me stop. But yeah, today we are going to talk about that Jalil Hackett versus Jose Roman fight and what the result means for Hackett. Also just to note, Hackett lost his WBA Continental North American Championship as a result of the loss. So the context going into this fight is quite important. Most of the general boxing fans who don't keep up to date with all of the up-and-coming prospects but do watch the big cards probably heard of Jalil Hackett for the first time going into his last fight against Pistol Pete Dobson on the Boots and his first Avenetian undercard back in July. So Jalil Hackett was only 8-0 going into his DAZN debut and first 10-round fight against Pete Dobson. So Hackett's first 10-round fight weren't against no bum. It was against a tough 16-1 fighter with 7 years of pro experience over him. And Dobson had also made somewhat of a name for himself on the DAZN scene, going 12 rounds with the power puncher Ben. So no journeyman for the 21-year-old Jalil Hackett on his DAZN debut. We see prospects fighting these journeymen who fold quite easily and can be stopped early on. But Hackett was being given a guy he might not be able to beat, and on paper, a guy that he more than likely wouldn't be able to stop. Now that fight had a decent build-up, and it was being touted by Eddie Hearn as a fight in which the prospect was taking a big leap up in competition. Now any promoter would say that, but in this case it's definitely true. And Eddie Hearn doesn't really mouth off and give his whole car salesman spiel when it comes to Jalil Hackett anyway, so Eddie was just stating facts here. Especially given that going into this 10-rounder, Jalil Hackett had never been past the 4th round before. So forget about the knockout looking unlikely on paper, forget about trying to pace yourself over 10 rounds. Jalil Hackett went at Pete Dobson from early, leading with power shots and looking for a KO, despite again, the KO seeming unlikely on paper. Hackett looked on his way to the KO in the 4th round, having Dobson fairly rocked, a state that Ben couldn't get him in, but being as tough as he is, Dobson survived that 4th round and stayed well in the fight after the fact. So of course Hackett was going past the 4th round for the first time, but he actually ended up going the full 10. Hackett boxed well from the 5th round onwards, while Dobson remained very competitive and got some good work in himself. The fight was decent from the 5th onwards, but it was somewhat of a come down from the 4th round, I can't lie. But at least Hackett got 10 rounds in the bag in just his 9th pro fight and got a clear decision victory. I think I had it 8 rounds to 2 for Hackett watching it live, but 2 judges had it 7-3 to Hackett and the other 6-4 to Hackett. So yeah, a competitive fight that got some fans interested in Hackett for sure. Now for his fight just gone. It was another scheduled 10-rounder that he went the distance in, but of course lost on the cards after 10 rounds, by way of a split decision. Now if I told you without any context whatsoever that an up-and-coming and undefeated American prospect lost to the unknown underdog by a split decision, you'd think, oh, the prospect probably lost quite clearly, but one judge dared to give it in favour of the A side. But that wasn't quite the case here, as some fans are saying that Hackett was actually robbed in this fight. And some important context here, his opponent, the 13-1 Jose Roman, his record coming into the fight of Hackett, is a Puerto Rican fighter, and the fight of course took place in Puerto Rico. So Hackett stepping in as the away fighter here. I'll be honest, the Dobson fight really would have made me root for this guy and see if he could proceed with his come up in a different way, not try and do it all prim and proper like other prospects in boxing, and just get stuck in there instead. Taking this fight of the possibility of being on the receiving end of a hometown decision just galvanises a good high risk attitude. Nah, I'll be honest, that's more the notion in hindsight after he actually lost a close decision, because he was a big favourite coming in. But we can still admire the guy for taking all of this adversity early on in his career, rather than trying to build himself up as untouchable and seeing how long he can hold on to that for. Now I'll be real, I didn't watch this fight live like I did Hackett's last fight, because this one was on at the same time as the main event of that magnificent 7 card here in the UK, but I've of course watched it back and W to Matchroom for posting it in full. And yeah, I'm going to quickly run down a couple bits about Jalil Hackett's first loss now from an absolutely rotten casual's perspective, and I will mention how I scored it, but I'm not going to do my round by round rundown from the perspective of scoring, detailing exactly why I scored each round to the fighter and why. I want to more so look at what kind of fight this was and why it was a tough fight for the young prospect in the context of the story of his development as a professional boxer. But I'll quickly give my 2 cents on which rounds I gave to who after. But again, this isn't a scoring video, a who really won type deal, so don't take that for gospel when I get to it. So the first round, Jalil Hackett wanted to establish his jab and he was more active with it than his opponent was from the off. The commentary team mentioned how Hackett said he wanted to out-jab the taller man because jabs win fights, which is good to hear from a young fighter. But despite Hackett being more active with the jab, he didn't have much success with it. And when Rahman threw his jabs, they connected at a much higher clip. Hackett led with power shots here and there and made a connection or two to the body. But yeah, fair play to the young fighter for trying to establish a jab, but he didn't get the better of the jab battle in the first. Second round, Hackett came out fast, establishing himself as the aggressor, but Rahman was being cagey. He was retreating, jabbing and grabbing. And Hackett, who wanted to establish a jab at first, was reduced to leading with power shots and did make some connections in there. Then Hackett started out the third round by investing to the body to some good success. He found his way with the body shots in this round. As a result, we saw the cagey Rahman clinching a lot, seemingly for recovery time. And after that, Rahman was giving Hackett some good body shots back himself as the two men started trading. In the fourth, Hackett is clearly still the aggressor, trying to find shots in there, but the cagey Jose Rahman is decent on the back foot, and he's still clinching of course. Hackett forces a trade halfway through the round, which was 50-50 at first, but Hackett just sticks on Rahman to win that long-winded exchange, which is good aggression from the young buck. He keeps at Rahman with the body shots for the remainder of the round, and Hackett does sort of look like he has to take one to give one here, but he is getting the better of the power punching exchanges. Alright, to start the fifth round, Hackett is taking shots in order to land to the body again, which is fan friendly indeed, but not ideal for getting ahead on the cards convincingly. The two men sort of went 50-50 in exchanges throughout the first minute of the round, but as the round went on, the pressure was paying off for Hackett and he was getting the better of things. Rahman was seemingly tiring out a little bit and clinching again of course. Going into the second half of the fight now, round 6, Hackett was forcing the action to get stuck in there with Jose Rahman and coming out better off still but taking a few himself. Hackett put the pressure on to good effect, but Rahman managed to tag Hackett on the back foot and mark Hackett's face up a bit. So Hackett is not the most defensively responsible fighter while coming forward at this point. Needless to say, Hackett is coming forward in the 7th as well, but not landing as much in this round. Rahman is actually tagging Hackett while on the back foot nicely. And when Hackett forced on one of those tight-knit exchanges, Rahman actually got the better of this one. Then we saw Rahman use some cheeky elbow work to get a shot off. Hometown boy getting away with one here. Hackett of course kept the pressure on, but this just wasn't his round, I ain't gonna lie. To start the 8th, Hackett forces an exchange again, which is good. We get a nice exchange which goes on a bit. Hackett of course keeps on his opponent after the exchange, and when they meet in close again not long after, Hackett clearly gets the better of this one, and then yeah, just stays a fun round as it goes on. 9th round, Rahman is looking decent, making connections on the pursuing Jalil Hackett. Rahman sort of boxing him around a little bit in this moment, much to the delight of the Puerto Rican faithful. None of Rahman's success or clinching, mind you, is deterring Hackett from coming forward, so good consistent pressure from Hackett, but not the most effective I must say. 10th and final round, Hackett of course starts early and is clinched by Rahman again, but then Rahman starts tagging him quite well on the back foot again. So Hackett is letting himself get caught more later on. Maybe a bit tired and impatient here. We didn't see him regress like this in the late stages of the Dobson fight, but we are seeing it here. And then yeah, Rahman just kind of coasted out there in the latter stages of the last round and Hackett couldn't get much work in. So yeah, after 10 rounds, it's fair to say that was a tough test and then some for the 21-year-old prospect. He showed a great tendency to push the action much like his last 10 rounder with Dobson, but he had a lot to deal with in terms of being in there against a cagey opponent who is much longer than him, despite Hackett actually being a tall welterweight himself, so he's probably not used to being in there with a guy that much taller than him. He was also coming in as the away fighter and was subjected to what comes with that, crowd going against him, ref letting his opponent get away with a couple bits, and also Rahman has a lot more pro rounds in than Hackett, so there's the experience element as well. And not like in a journeyman weight, Rahman is of course a winning fighter as you can see by the record, and Hackett got tired on as he apparently struggled with the weight cut, which I'll touch on a bit more later. So yeah, kinda refreshing to see a prospect go through all of this kind of adversity so early on in his career. Not that I want to see prospects out here losing left, right and centre, but nights like this can build a fighter up, really harden them up and shape them up to potentially be truly great, win, lose or draw. But he of course actually lost the fight, so that really captures the element of going through it early in your career. So yeah, as for him actually losing, well, one judge had it 96-94 for Hackett, and the other two had it 96-94 to Rahman. So do I agree with these scores? Well, I'm actually going to give my 2 cents on who I think won each round of that fight. And as for what my final score amounts to, well, I'll give a trigger warning now. You guys are going to hate this. I also might have spoiled it a bit if you really took note of how I was just talking about them rounds. Alright, so here goes nothing. I have round 1 to Rahman off of that nice accurate jab. Round 2 was a bit closer, but Rahman still just a bit cleaner and more accurate with the jab, so I also gave round 2 to Rahman. Round 3 I gave to Hackett for doing the better bodywork. Round 4 I gave to Hackett for the better bodywork again and just winning the exchanges. 5th round I also gave to Hackett for his effective pressure and still coming off looking stronger in the exchanges. Round 6 we have in my opinion the closest round in the fight. The two went 50-50 for effective punches in my eyes, but I edged it to Hackett as he was the aggressor. Round 7 I gave to Rahman from just getting the cleaner punches in all round. Round 8 went to Hackett for me for his aggression and for winning those exchanges again. Round 9 for me was a clear Rahman round for just outboxing Hackett in that one. And finally round 10 I gave to Rahman from landing good shots on the back foot again and not much done by Hackett in that 10th and final round. So if you didn't keep count of that, that's round 1 to Rahman, round 2 to Rahman, round 3 to Hackett, round 4 to Hackett, round 5 to Hackett, round 6 to Hackett, round 7 to Rahman, round 8 to Hackett, round 9 to Rahman, and round 10 to Rahman. So that, I hate to say it, adds up to 5 rounds apiece, so I had the fight as a 95-95 draw on my cards, which would of course mean the young fighter would still be undefeated, but would have a blemish on his record. Round 2 and round 6 were the only two disputable rounds in my eyes, and I of course gave round 2 to Rahman and round 6 to Hackett. So yeah, no robbery here. One judge having it 6-4 to Hackett and the other two having it 6-4 to Rahman is fair in my eyes. But yeah, that was a good competitive fight as I said. Good test for Hackett. He couldn't stay consistent with the jab and work off it as he wanted to. Took some shots to give some, which yeah, you can't swim without getting wet, just like you can't box without getting hit of course, but there's still a threshold for defensive responsibility. And he got tired late on. So yeah, many great lessons to be learnt here, and I hope this experience does him the world of good, and I do trust that it will. So what does this mean for the young buck going forward? Well, here's the thing, seeing as he has no O to protect, let's just hope he goes all out and takes risk early in his career, and goes on to be a greatly entertaining fighter that takes on all comers. Not that he wouldn't have been that kind of fighter if he did still have his O intact, mind you. This guy seems like he has the right attitude all round. Now, he doesn't talk too much from what I see, but I have heard him calling out names who are much more experienced in the pros than himself, like Brian Norman Jr. and stuff. So Hackett doesn't want to waste no time, he wants to take risks and roll the dice. And not in reckless fashion either, because he does seem to be very mature for his age. We've seen great fighters of the past take losses early on. The obvious example is Bernard Hopkins, who lost both his pro debut and his first world title shot, and he went on to be the longest reigning middleweight champion of all time, and went on to be a great light heavyweight champion as well. And we can list off examples all day of the great old school fighters who took losses early on. As for a current example, you've got the best 130 pound fighter in the world right now, Emmanuel Navarrete, who lost just his 6th pro fight. And you know, he's got that risk-taking mindset. Rolled the dice going up to fight for the 135 pound title, and he's of course just coming off of his 2nd win over Oscar Valdez to defend his 130 pound title. Another thing that makes me warm to Hackett is that we have to see these young fighters hyped up by promoters and the boxing media in general, left, right and centre. Which the way I see it, all power to those guys getting hyped up, but obviously it's very understandable why that leads to resentment from the masses. But Hackett, despite being a promising prospect, doesn't have the hype job element as much. I mean, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I don't see much come up about him here on YouTube. But I'll be honest, I'm not really on social media at all. I'm definitely not bragging about that. That's pure laziness from my part, especially as a content creator. I ought to be keeping up to date with things. So maybe Hackett does talk a bit on social media. One thing I can say about Hackett not being a hype job, as I said before, is that he is promoted by Eddie Hearn, who always talks up his guys so much. But I don't hear him talk about Jalil Hackett that much. I mean, this is all I've heard from him since Hackett's defeat.
If you use Puerto Rico as an example, 2 of our guys lost in fights they were supposed to win, yeah? Jalil Hackett, went over, they wanted that test. And he made the weight shit, in my opinion, and he lost.
That's not me saying Eddie Hearn ought to be screaming his praises all day, by the way. But yeah, that comment of course leads me nicely onto the topic of weight now. So if there's a lesson to be learned on being disciplined with your weight, then it's this. I mean, it cost him his O, so I'm sure he'll be on point with his weight from here on out. He ain't got to think about moving up, just got to keep his weight down out of camp. Because one thing I will say is that he has not been the most active in terms of how often he fights, as a prospect especially. So this might be something to consider. He might be blowing up between fights by the looks of it. Now, a lot of fighters talk about wanting to go up in weight as if they just dread keeping their weight on point. I can't lie, the way James Toney did it was based. He spoke about moving up to heavyweight since he was at 160, and when he fought Roy Jones at 168, he killed himself cutting down from 214 from what I've read. And obviously eventually he just got fully obese and fought as a short fat heavyweight and had decent success up at heavy. If you look at fighters of today, I'm pretty sure Devin Haney was talking about 154 before he even became champ at 135. Just can't wait to pack on the pounds. But I do reckon Jalil Hackett will campaign at 47 by the way he's talking and the names he's calling out. And just to note, Hackett actually said himself that he was not tired in the later rounds against Rahman, and actually less tired than he was in the later stages of his fight against Dobson, which is interesting to hear, and shows how little I can identify about how a fighter feels from watching on my couch. Speaking of Devin Haney, it's known that Haney does not take a loss very well now, does he? And that can be juxtaposed with how Hackett has taken his loss well, saying no robbery excuses please. Some fans are saying this is a robbery, but not Hackett himself. He wanted the KO in the fight and knew he probably needed one, and he didn't get it, and he took that on the chin well. But funnily enough, Devin Haney himself was bashing the young prospect for taking his first L. Absolute baby thing from Haney.
That was some baby thing.
I do hope Hackett gets his hands on Haney in the future, and that Hackett batters Haney. Not right now, of course. I reckon right now Haney jabs his head off, I'll be so real. But Hackett is developing fast, and if he becomes a champ at 147, then maybe that could be Haney's first title fight up at 147. Depends on how the timeline plays out, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves here.
Alright, I'm going to have to stop the video right here. So this is me speaking after having already narrated the whole video and edited most of it, but mid-editing I found more footage of Eddie Hearn speaking about the Jalil Hackett fight on an interview on the Fight Hub TV. So yeah, this is it's very important that I put this in here. So yeah, I ain't been on point, man. I should have, found this video in my research, but yeah, I found it mid-editing, so take a listen.
Jalil Hackett wants to move a little bit quicker. He boxed the pretty average Puerto Rican guy. Actually put up a great fight because he completely fucked himself at the weight, and that's, in my opinion, why he lost. And he got beat. He's not good enough. Do you know what I mean? And then people respond on social media, oh, that's harsh on the fighters. What do you want me to lie? Well, you say, he was good enough? I can't say he was good enough because he lost. When you're matching a prospect, yeah, 6-rounder, 6-rounder, 8-round, yeah, that's like, you've got to at least not make it embarrassing. But once you start having 4, 5, 10-round fights, and we've invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in these fighters, I need to find out how good you are. And I'm not even throwing you in deep, by the way. I'm just throwing you in a level that I need you to cruise past. And you got beat. So that shows me you're either not at the level or you had a bad performance. It's not, thanks very much, have a nice life. It's just, we need to evaluate where you are. Because as a business, we can't just keep throwing hundreds and thousands of dollars at you if you're not going to go on and become world championship level. We don't throw fighters into the wolves in the 6-fight, 10-fight. We just want to know that you're on the right path to reach world level. And not everybody is good enough. And that's the reality. So I would rather be accused of making reasonably competitive fights where sometimes your prospect loses than just giving them just shit. So they get to 16-0, 20-0, they've never boxed anyone, they step up to top 15 and just get spanked straight off the bat. So I'll continue what I'm doing, and if you don't like it, don't watch. But if you're good enough, you will be just fine.
So yeah, that is the way things ought to be. In the grand scheme of things, the philosophy is correct. But the only thing I would say in terms of like Jalil Hackett being put through the ringer is that prospects before him might have had to not go through that, even though it might be the best for him overall. It's just interesting to hear Eddie Hearn talk like that. He was saying about Mark Castro as well. But I've never heard him speak that blasé about his fighters. So it'd be interesting to see how Jalil Hackett fares, after this loss, and if he even stays in Matchroom. Because, he's basically suggesting that he's not good enough. So it's interesting to see, especially from Eddie Hearn that always talks his fighters up. But yeah, the philosophy, I'm definitely not saying it's wrong, but it'll be interesting to see how he comes through, because obviously some prospects didn't have it that way. So yeah, but also while I'm mid-editing, I'm looking at more stuff about Jalil Hackett. I'm realising I'm probably going to get cooked for this video. I'm probably going to get called a Matchroom fanboy, for saying that Jalil Hackett's so good because he beat Dobson, who went the distance with Conor Benn. But I mean, it wouldn't really make me a Matchroom fanboy because of the way Eddie Hearn's talking about him. But yeah, just all round, I don't think people are rating Jalil Hackett, which I understand other prospects. I might be saying he's not getting hyped up like other prospects, but said prospects might have, been objectively way better than him after 8 or 9 pro fights. I don't know. So I don't think, and people are not happy with his performance at all. I've critiqued it. I critiqued it a lot there with my casual take on the fight. But yeah, I don't think people are gonna rate me talking him up this much. But yeah, one more thing actually. People might interpret this as Eddie Hearn coping for loads of his fighters losing, lashing out a little bit. So, if his fighters not getting the treatment his fighters usually get, again, I'm not saying this new philosophy is the wrong thing, then it's just quite unfortunate to be an Eddie Hearn promoted fighter at the time he's, going crazy because all his fighters are losing. Literally as I speak, we just saw Chev Clark last night losing quite a big upset loss. That's, of course, one of his fighters. So, yeah, Eddie Hearn is he's changing a bit,
So what's actually next up for Hackett? Well, I've expressed how I love to see guys take risks early on. You know, coming up down at lightweight, you've got the 22-year-old Floyd Schofield taking on the world-renowned Shakur Stevenson in his first ever world title shot, just off the back of his first 12-rounder. So it's good, man. Not wasting no time against no-names and just getting stuck straight in. But as for the Brian Norman Jr. fight that's being talked about by Jalil Hackett, look, Brian Norman Jr. has just been upgraded to full WBO World Welterweight Champion since winning the interim title. And the 9-1 unranked Hackett doesn't quite deserve a world title shot coming off of a loss now. I mean, 147 ain't great now as we know, but Hackett can't even challenge for the WBO world title either way, because he's not ranked in the WBO's rankings. Hackett's only ranked by the WBA. Hackett himself is talking about an immediate rematch of Jose Roman next up, which is valid, but this wouldn't do anything for him in terms of the WBO rankings. So yeah, the ambitions are there, he's not beating around the bush, but as for the fights that can actually be made for him in the near future, we'll have to wait and see. He's at least 2 fights away from a world title shot. In reality, it's going to be way more than that. I'm basically just saying it's impossible for him to get a shot within 2 fights because of the rankings and stuff. And although he's not being so carefully promoted in terms of padding his record up and that, I also don't think he'll be fast-tracked to a world title, unfortunately for him. Now, an important talking point I have to get into in terms of him not being one of them hype jobs. Now, let's not beat around the bush. It's their Mayweather prospects, innit? They all want to do it like Money May. Now, I'm a massive fan of Floyd Mayweather, and there is things to like about some of his prospects, but the thing is that, like, there's Pretty Boy Floyd and there's Money May, but these guys try and do it like Money May from when they're young, innit? But yeah, I digress. But the thing is, it's not just like Jalil Hackett's different to the other African American prospects who have come up in recent years. No, he literally left the Mayweather promotions. He broke off from them at the young age of 20 years old, solidifying that differentiation from himself and the other young fighters of his ilk, if you like, not needing to be associated with older boxers and being some protege. And I didn't really want to say this part. I don't know if you could tell, but apart from when I went through the fight and the scorecards, I've been trying my hardest to articulate in the most objective way I can about why this guy is different and why I've taken a liking to him. But I've gone in circles a bit, so I'll just drop it now. Look, the guy just has this sort of aura of ruggedness about him which I can't quite explain. I don't know, maybe it's the gaunt face.
You take your glasses off.
I'm gonna take my glasses off when we face off.
Your shit all fucked up. That's why you don't want to take them off. Your face look like a punching bag.
You was a moving punching bag.
And your lips is mad ashy. And your teeth is fucked up. After you get a bag from Eddie, go get your teeth fixed.
Okay. I mean, this is going to go horribly wrong for someone on Saturday night.
You know, he's a tall welterweight as well, a bit Thomas Hearns-esque, but he just seems like a no-nonsense guy all round. But yeah, surely some of you can see what I'm talking about when I say that Hackett just sort of has that look about him. I also love the nickname as well, Jalil Major Hackett. But yeah, you guys let me know what you think about Jalil Hackett versus Jose Roman. Let me know what you think about the scorecards. Please do remember though, this isn't a scoring video. I reiterate, the purpose here is not for me to correct people that are claiming the fight as a robbery or anything like that. I just wanted to state the score I happen to have. I watched this fight a couple times and the first time I didn't score it, and I could see why people had Hackett winning. There's a very fair case for 6-4 Hackett, but Roman arguably nicked the first couple and then got the last couple and got one probably somewhere in the middle. So although Hackett had the longest streak of success, when you actually count up the rounds you can't call him a clear winner. And of course Hackett himself did say it wasn't a robbery. But even when the purpose of the video isn't scoring, people are still going to go crazy in the comments, so I gotta excuse myself. If I really wanted to make it about the scoring, I would hyper-analyse those 2 rounds I said could have gone each way, the 2nd and the 6th rounds. But yeah, I'll leave that up to you lot in the comments, because I mean, on the fan score and on BoxRec, the 5th round was given to Roman, so I must just not know what I'm talking about, innit? But yeah, I'm just here to sort of reflect on why the fight was so difficult and discuss why such a hard fight can be good for a young fighter's development, and how I've taken a liking to the guy from what I've seen in the ring, so yeah, I just look forward to his next fight. This fight with Roman wasn't that entertaining, but the fun moments were thanks to Hackett, and I could see him becoming a fight of the year type of fighter, having crazy fights with people whose styles mesh with his, because the crop of fighters I've been juxtaposing him with today aren't known to be the most fun to watch in the ring. And I of course envisage Hackett to be a different type of fighter, old school type guy possibly. To all those whose main aim is to hit and not get hit, and they win titles doing it, fair play to them, all power to them, but let's be honest, as fans of the sport and not the fighter, we want to see guys just get stuck in for the most part, as much as we can appreciate a one-sided masterclass from time to time. But let me stop waffling right now. Again, let me know how you scored Hackett versus Roman. Let me know what you think's next for Jalil Hackett. If you should rematch Jose Roman or move on to try and get a WBO ranking to potentially get that shot at Brian Norman. Let me know how far you see him going in his career and all that. And one last important thing. Look, I pride myself on doing a lot of research for my videos, but this video is a bit unprofessional from my part because on the grand scheme of things, I actually couldn't tell you that much about Jalil Hackett despite the fact that I'm doing a whole video on him right now. I'm just expressing that I like what I've seen from him, and that's limited to his 2 fights he's had since signing with Matchroom, going 1-1. If any of you have followed his career closely from before he signed to Matchroom, do let me know if I'm missing out anything major about him. Yeah, I'm a casual out here, innit? I'm not following American prospects from their pro debut. So yeah, thanks for listening to this casual waffle on, innit? And be sure to give your much more educated takes in the comments. And you have been listening to O.M.E Boxing.